We're back for another Saturday special podcast for the CJ Sweat Show. Appreciate you guys joining me on this episode. Is the NBA in really big trouble? The future of the NBA could be in jeopardy. Did the Cleveland Browns live up to their reputation in the NFL draft, or did they maybe outsmart the other 31 franchises in the NFL? And will the New York Giants regret taking Saquon Barkely? All of that and more on this episode of the CJ Sweat Show. We start right now. I'm not bringing the bias here. You are.
What they do up there? Brainwashing?
Hey, it's not my fault that your team is terrible.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This is just the honest. I'm sorry if it hurts. Oh wait, I'm not really sorry.
Put that coffee down.
You can't stop! Can't stop, won't stop. Where the bricks at?
This is the CJ Sweat Show. We are back on another Saturday special podcast. Thank you guys for joining me on this Saturday morning, or maybe you are catching us on Apple, on iTunes, and maybe it's Saturday evening for you. Happy Cinco de Mayo, happy Derby Day, happy NBA playoffs, happy NHL playoffs. You know, for the NFL to not be happening right now, this is really a great time in sports. This is possibly the best second round of the NBA playoffs I can remember. It's been incredibly exciting to watch that. But I'm going to start off today with an interesting take on the NBA, because I've been thinking about this a lot over the past couple of weeks. I think the NBA could be in really big trouble. The NBA has this big problem with tanking. Okay, now ESPN wants you to think that the biggest topic right now in sports is still Colin Kaepernick, but really I think this is a much bigger topic, because this could potentially change the entire structure of every single one of these professional leagues. Okay, so the NBA, more than any other league, has a big problem with tanking. Teams that don't have stars decide to be terrible so that they can get stars. That's the basic concept of tanking. And there are a number of teams right now in the NBA that were obviously tanking to get a better draft pick. The Atlanta Hawks, the Orlando Magic, Chicago Bulls, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Suns, Kings, all of these teams, Nets, all of them trying to be as bad as they could be to get a better draft pick. Now, no, I don't believe that players are intentionally playing bad to help their team get a better draft pick. That's not happening. But what I do believe is happening is I believe, a player is maybe gets his stomach knocked out. He's out for a week. Oh, there's a player who, had a nice night in the G League. We're going to move him up to our starting lineup tonight. I believe these organizations are looking for every possible loophole they can find to make sure their record at the end of the year is absolutely the worst, so they can have the best chance to get the number one pick in the NBA draft. And here's the biggest problem with all of this, with teams tanking, is that we now have coaches being fired in the NBA. And I'm going to read you a list of coaches who were fired, and we're going to see which teams are actually tanking and which firings made sense. Okay, so in total, there were 8 head coaches fired from the NBA. There's 30 teams in the league, so 8 teams decided to fire their head coach. That means the turnover of the NBA this year is over 25%. 25% of NBA coaches were fired this year. Okay, let's go through each of these. So the Hornets fired Steve Clifford. The Magics fired Frank Vogel. The Knicks fired Jeff Hornacek. The Bucks, middle of the season, fired Jason Kidd. Memphis fired David Fizdale. The Suns fired Earl Watson. And the Hawks fired Mike Budenholzer. Okay, so there's your firings. Okay, so which teams are tanking? Let's go through this again. Which teams are tanking? And it's absolutely obvious they're tanking. The Kings, the Mavericks, the Grizzlies, the Suns, the Hawks, the Magic, the Bulls, and the Nets are all the ones that are obviously tanking. They don't have one star on that team, and they did things throughout the entire year to make their record as bad as it could possibly be. Here's the big problem right now with all of this. Because, like, we can, talk about, okay, you've got these teams with bad records, it's bad basketball to watch. We can talk about all of that. And ultimately, I think you could make the argument that we've never really cared about the bottom half of the NBA anyways, so what does it matter? Here's the big problem, though. When a team decides to tank, and they decide to be absolutely horrible, a coach like Earl Watson, the coach of the Suns, I want to ask you, what did he do wrong? What did he do wrong? The Suns wanted to tank. They wanted to have a top 5 pick. They wanted to have a lottery pick. They wanted to have the best chance of getting the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. So what did Earl Watson do that got him fired? If the GM comes to a coach and says, hey, I don't want to be good this season. We need lottery balls. And you say, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to do that. And your record all of a sudden is horrible. Do you deserve to be fired? Because I got news for you. Like, in the NBA, Brad Stevens is the best head coach right now. I believe Brad Stevens is the best head coach. He couldn't take that Suns team and win 30 games. And here's the thing you have to realize about all of these leagues, okay? All of these leagues are a little bit different. For example, the NFL, what is the NFL about? The NFL is about organization. How do you as an organization succeed? Okay, we know like the Steelers and the Patriots are incredibly well-run organizations. That's why they're always successful. We also know organizations like the Browns, the Bills, the Dolphins are incredibly poorly run. So they're always bad. And even like the Bills and the Dolphins, every once in a while they get to playoffs. The Browns don't even do that. The Browns are one of the worst run organizations. So in the NFL, it's not about how much star power do you have. It's not even really about your head coach. A little bit of it is. They're important. But the NFL is about what are you as an organization. College football and college basketball is all about who is your head coach. Okay, Alabama, who's your head coach? Nick Saban. You're absolutely incredible. LSU has the exact same talent, exact same amount of talent as Alabama. Who's your head coach? Ed Orgeron. See the difference? USC, who's been your head coach? Clay Helton. You kind of struggled against teams like Notre Dame. Okay, there's a big gap whenever there's a big gap in coaching. The college football, college basketball is all about coaching. Jay Wright's been incredibly successful. He's an incredible head coach. So is Coach K. The second you take Coach K, John Calipari, Jay Wright from their respective programs, those programs would fall apart tomorrow. College sports is all about the coach. NFL is about the organization. Major League Baseball, for the most part, is about the organization. But what is the NBA about? The NBA, more than anything else, is about star players. And about you having star players. So if you don't have star players, you cannot win at this level. Even and by the way, head coaches are important, but even the best coach team in the NBA, the Boston Celtics, they aren't going to play in the NBA Finals. And the second best coach in the NBA team, the San Antonio Spurs, have already been knocked out. It's never been about coaching. Now, it can help you once you get to playoffs, but it's never been about coaching. It's been about star power. So, let me ask you again. If you are a head coach of an NBA team and you don't have a star, you don't have one star on your team, and your owner and your GM are doing things and telling you, we want lottery picks, do you deserve to be fired if your team was bad like they wanted that team to be? The answer is absolutely not. Yeah, we had 8 teams fire their coaches. Okay, let's go through each of these teams, and I want you to tell yourself, as you're driving along, if you think they should have been fired. Okay, Atlanta Hawks. They played something called Josh Maggette at point guard, and he averaged 12 minutes per game. Okay, Josh Maggette is 28. He spent his entire career in the G League and played college at Alabama. Not that big Alabama school in Tuscaloosa, which isn't even a basketball school. Alabama Huntsville. All right, I'm pretty good at knowing nicknames of college teams. You go and tell me what the nickname is of Alabama Huntsville. Nobody knows what that school is. That player, 28, played at Alabama Huntsville, spent his entire career in the G League, played 12 minutes, averaged 12 minutes per game for the Hawks this year. Hawks fired their coach. Okay, the Suns. The starting 5 of the Phoenix Suns had an average age Average age of the starting 5 of the Phoenix Suns, 21 years and 14 days. 21 years and 14 days. By comparison, there are multiple college teams with an older starting 5 than the Phoenix Suns. That is true. Multiple college teams. That's how young the Suns are. You could put, I don't care who your coach is. It does not matter. That team would have been just as bad with Brad Stevens, Greg Popovich, any coach. I don't care. Their starting 5 is so young. All right, Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis played Jarrell Martin in 73 games, and he started 36 games. Okay, who is Jarrell Martin? Nobody knows. But apparently he was good enough to start in half their games. Okay, so last year they decided Jarrell Martin wasn't good enough to play. So Memphis sent him to the G League. Did he drastically get better since then? No. After averaging 9 more minutes per game this year than last year, his average points per game went from an amazing 3.9 to just this incredible 7.7. He started in half the games for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Magic went 25-57 and didn't even attempt to acquire a capable starter in free agency or via trades. Their best player is Aaron Gordon, who is a volleyball player. I don't even think he plays NBA. I think his asset is if you throw the ball up near to him, near the rim, he'll probably tip it in. That's what Aaron Gordon brings to the Magic. Okay, so those teams are all obviously they all fire their head coach. The problem that this is now creating is that no good coach wants to coach in the NBA because the only teams that are hiring coaches are teams that don't have star players, and the only way to win in the NBA is to have star players. And if your team tries to acquire players, star players through the draft by tanking, they're going to fire you. This is why Coach K didn't leave Duke to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm a huge Duke fan. The LA Lakers is a premier job. But Coach K wouldn't leave Duke to take the Lakers job because he's like, I'm not going to move my family out to LA for us to be terrible for 5 years before we get this thing figured out and to get fired eventually. It would damage my career. We would move all the way across the country for nothing. I'm not going to do that. So these NBA coaches, I think eventually, because they all know each other, they're all connected to each other. We all, listen, guys like not Jay, right? Jay Bilas love to get so irritated and upset, and they get furious whenever their friends get fired from college program that allows you to schedule 15 home games, and all you have to do is win your conference tournament to get into the national tournament. They get so furious when any of those guys are fired. Yep, here we are. Coaches are being told to lose and then getting fired for losing. And this is a problem in the NBA. And Adam Silver is too player-friendly to address it. So Adam Silver doesn't want to upset these players. I have a feeling at some point soon we're going to see a revolt from coaches in the NBA. The longer this happens, the more that this happens, coaches are going to start taking notice. Coaches will start taking notice. The only teams I think you can make an argument that should have fired their head coach, I would say the Bucks. Okay, the Bucks have a legitimate star player. They were awful midway through the year, started 23-22. They fired Jason Kidd. I got that one. All right, that one I understood. Now, you could make an argument for the Hornets because the Hornets have two star players in Kemba Walker and Dwight Howard. But Dwight Howard, okay, even that one, which you can make an argument for, Dwight Howard is past his prime and isn't a good fit in this league. He's a back-to-the-center basket that can't hit a shot from more than 10 feet away. He doesn't play well in this league. He does not give you any value. He gets a lot of rebounds, and that's really about it. He does not add value to a team. And the Hornets, by the way, nearly snuck into playoffs. So, I mean, Steve Clifford, I thought he did as good of a job as he could have getting that team there. I don't think he necessarily deserved to be fired. Now, the Knicks, I'll hear you out on, because the Knicks actually did go and find a good coach in David Fizdale. But the Knicks also, before Porzingis essentially died, the Knicks were 21-25. So the Knicks were right there on the edge of getting into playoffs with one star and a mess of contracts. I mean, their contractual situation is a complete disaster. They were in the hunt for playoffs midway through the season. Only star player they have goes down, and then they only won 8 games after that. Again, I understand that one because you got David Fizdale, but like the Knicks, the Hornets, and the Bucks are the only 3 that understand. They're the only 3 teams that should have fired their coaches. We should be shaming the Magic. We should be shaming the Grizzlies, the Suns, and the Hawks for firing their coaches. They don't deserve to be fired. They did what they were hired to do, what they were told to do, and they have no star players. This is a big problem in the NBA. Everybody keeps telling me the NFL has problems. Listen, the NFL draft just destroyed every other TV rating that's not the Super Bowl this past weekend, and it was an off season. It's the off season, and we spent last weekend watching the NFL draft. That's all we did last season. Like, this is why Roger Goodell is so valuable, is because we spent 3 days watching teams make phone calls. No other commissioner can get that done. We all like to say, well, the NBA is on the up and up. Not if this keeps happening. Because the NBA has right now 7 teams really, almost a quarter of the league, not even trying. And they've got 8 head coaches getting fired, a 25% turnover this year. You can't have that year to year and be okay. That's not going to last. NBA is in serious trouble. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is the NFL draft. So the NFL draft happened last weekend. There are a lot of interesting things that happened. So let's start off with the first pick overall. The Cleveland Browns took Baker Mayfield. And now I've been saying, and Ben King and I had a podcast 2 weeks ago before the draft, and we came out and said this would be the dumbest pick of all. We think they should take Sam Darnold number 1. Ben said they were going to take Josh Allen number 1. I didn't like that, but I understood Josh Allen. Because Josh Allen at least, has a big arm. He's got a lot of potential. He doesn't have baggage. I got that one. But for the 3rd straight year, the Cleveland Browns selected a quarterback that had baggage coming into the league. Okay, 2 years ago, they selected Johnny Manziel. Last year, they selected Deshaun Kaiser, whose coach came out and said, yeah, he's not ready to play in this league yet. And then this year, they took Baker Mayfield, who has a police video. Okay, now let's just forget for a minute the scouting reports, okay? It's like everybody wants to say, oh, if you look at the way Baker Mayfield throws this ball, and if you look at his footwork, it's absolutely beautiful, man. It's absolutely beautiful. Let's forget that for a minute. Right? Let's forget, everybody trying to be an NFL scout for a second, and let's just look at the situation, okay? Baker Mayfield was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, okay? If one of the best prospects in league history, Andrew Luck, drafted by the Colts, had trouble overcoming their dysfunction, imagine how difficult it will be for Baker Mayfield, who has a video of him running from the cops, to overcome the dysfunction in Cleveland. Like, that's not going to be easy. Sam Darnold doesn't have any baggage. The Jets are pretty dysfunctional, but I think Sam Darnold can deal with that. Okay, Josh Allen, he doesn't have any baggage. The Bills are pretty dysfunctional. I think he can deal with that. I don't think Baker Mayfield can deal with the Browns' dysfunction. Okay, Browns GM, by the way, John Dorsey, he came out and said Baker won him over in the interview. That's him publicly saying. That is John Dorsey publicly saying, yeah, we know Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen are far better talents. We just liked Baker Mayfield's interview. That's what that means. He won you over in the interview. Nothing on the field. Nothing about his game. You liked him because he's a good guy to get a beer with. That's really who you're going with? Okay, let's just put everything aside again. Put everything aside. The Browns then, with the 4th pick overall, drafted cornerback Denzel Ward. Okay, so the best pass rushing prospect in 5 years was available. Okay, pass rushing, according to every website I looked at this morning, pass rushing is far more valuable in the NFL, and the Browns went secondary. Pass rushing is super important, and the Browns had at their fingertips the best pass rushing prospect in 5 years. And what did they do? Yeah, let's go get a corner. What on earth are you even thinking? So to recap, the Browns, a dysfunctional organization, passed on the 2 best quarterback prospects in a decade and the best pass rushing prospect in 5 years. And I'm trusting that Baker Mayfield is going to succeed there. Like, it's amazing. We've spent the past however many years poking fun at the Browns, and then the second they take bro guy, dude bro, Baker Mayfield, now all of a sudden, praise be to the Browns. I don't get it. Like, I do not get it. Baker Mayfield's not going to succeed in Cleveland because it's Cleveland. By the way, all these Browns fans, most of them are fellow Ohio State fans. Yeah, it seems like, if I remember correctly, 7 months ago, you guys were calling him a cocky jerk for planting the Oklahoma flag at the midfield line of your stadium. And now all of a sudden, praise be to Baker. Like, it just, look at what your organization is doing. This isn't going to work. I'm going to tell you right now. I've got a quarterback not named Baker Mayfield who's going to be the most successful quarterback in this draft. I'll give his name to you in a minute. Okay, second overall during the NFL draft, the New York Giants then selected Saquon Barkely. Saquon Barkely, running back out of Penn State. I'm a Redskins fan. Most of you all that listen to me know that. As a Redskin fan, I was so happy the Giants took Saquon Barkely. Ask yourself this. Today, who is the worst quarterback in the NFC East? Eli Manning. Eli Manning. Number 1 is Carson Wentz. Number 2, I would say, is probably between Alex Smith and Dak Prescott. Number 3 is going to be the other one. And then number 4 is going to be Eli Manning. He's the worst quarterback in the NFC East. What is the NFL? Oh, it's a quarterback league. The Giants could have added an elite pass rusher, or they could have added a franchise quarterback. Either of those would have made me really nervous. Not to mention, they could have gotten a franchise quarterback or an elite pass rusher and drafted a very capable running back later in the draft. Or they could have traded out of the number 2 pick because number 3 and 4 weren't going to take Saquon Barkley. And they could have taken Saquon Barkley later on in the draft and also gotten another first-round pick and gotten another elite player. But instead of doing anything that made sense, the New York Giants put all of their coins into Saquon Barkley instead. Okay, here's what this is like. Imagine you're on the car lot. You're going to buy a new car, right? And you're looking at your budget, and you're looking at how much these are going to cost a month. So essentially, you could choose between a Toyota Camry or a Lexus. Now, if you buy the Camry, you can also afford a down payment on a house, which is pretty cool because you've been living in that crappy apartment for the past, 4 years. So, you can afford a down payment on a house, and you can afford a housing payment because the Camry is not going to cost you nearly as much. If you buy the Lexus, you can only afford the car and not a house. So you're going to be staying in that apartment you've been in for the past 4 years for probably another 4 years. Now, a Lexus has the name brand, and it's going to get you noticed, obviously. But Camrys never break down. And by the way, Toyota's like they make Lexus. So no one would deny that the Lexus is a better car than the Camry. But is the difference worth not buying a house? Of course not. And if you can get the house on the Camry, buy the Camry. That's exactly what this was. The New York Giants could have gotten a really nice car and a house. Instead, they just took a super nice car. Congrats on that. That's not going to work. Running backs, by the way, have value in the NFL because of their ability to protect a lead. That's the value running backs bring to a team. Because now we can hand the ball off and chew clock. The Giants, though, were not bad last year because they lost leads late in games. They were bad because they never had a lead to begin with. Oh, by the way, who else had last year? Who else had down years last year at running back position? C.J. Anderson with the Denver Broncos, who were bad. Bilal Powell with the Cleveland Browns, who were bad. Amir Abdullah with the Detroit Lions, who were bad. Doug Martin with the Tampa Bay Bucks, who were bad. All were on teams that didn't have leads throughout most of the year, and so they could never provide the value they give those organizations. By the way, Jay Ajayi, a lot of you like him. He averaged 66 yards per game prior to being traded from the Dolphins to the Eagles. After that trade, he averaged 58 yards per game. Oh yeah, he was a backup when he was traded to Philly. Translation, his value as a backup in successful Philadelphia was nearly equivalent, to his value as a starter with awful Miami. Point being, what value does Saquon Barkley bring to your organization if you can't get leads to begin with? Because the way you get leads is through the air and not on the ground. That pick didn't make any sense to me. The Giants, I just believe, cemented themselves as the number 4 team in the NFC East for the foreseeable future. Congrats. My other last takeaway from the NFL draft. Josh Rosen, if he can avoid long-term injury, which is a big if, by the way, considering his history, he's going to have the most successful career out of the quarterbacks that were drafted this year. Okay, let's name the organizations that drafted quarterbacks in the first round. Browns, Jets, Bills, Cardinals, and Ravens. Okay, of those organizations, which one would you rather play for? Okay, and I'm not doing, take out fanhood. Out of those organizations, based on history, which organization would you rather play for? Probably the Cardinals or the Ravens. Why? Because they're the most well-run. Okay? What one trait do most NFL quarterbacks have? They were overlooked in the NFL draft for things that didn't matter. Aaron Rodgers, too cocky. Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, both of them lack arm strength. Drew Brees, he had a bad combine. Everybody freaks out about the combine. Drew Brees had a bad combine. Derek Carr, looked at his scouting report. Anxiety issues and small hands. In Deshaun Watson, people said, he throws interceptions. Okay, all of those quarterbacks have been successful. So we passed on Josh Rosen because he's smart. His dad's a doctor. He might have other options outside of football, and we can't deal with that. None of that matters. None of that has ever translated into what makes a quarterback successful or a bust. You know what does? Police videos typically do, but we're going to ignore that with Baker Mayfield. Just say it out loud. Browns, Jets, Bills, Cardinals, Ravens. Those organizations, which one is going to be most successful over the next decade? The Cardinals and the Ravens. And the Ravens take a quarterback who's short and fast, I like, but that's a project. That's going to take some time to build. Josh Rosen is ready to throw in this league now. And by the way, he doesn't have to play week 1. That's the biggest problem. Baker Mayfield, they got to play in week 1. Josh Allen, they don't have another quarterback option in Buffalo. Sam Darnold, you got Ryan Fitzpatrick. That'll last you about 3 games, and then you're going to be subbed in. Arizona, though, he doesn't have to play week 1. As long as Sam Bradford doesn't roll an ankle walking into the practice facility, Josh Rosen will likely get to sit out the first half of the year before he even takes a snap. That is so valuable. Aaron Rodgers was given the same treatment. So was Dak Prescott. So was Drew Brees. So was Derek Carr. So was Deshaun Watson. They didn't have to play right away. Some of them played early on in their career, early on in their first season. They didn't have to play right away. Josh Rosen's not going to have to. So, and by the way, there's one negative is he's really smart. Don't you think maybe the organization that's got a history of being stupid would want to have a smart player in their locker room? I don't know, Cleveland. That might be something to consider. Just maybe. But go ahead, you take Baker Mayfield. I'm going to go with Josh Rosen for having the most successful career. And I think Sam Darnold's going to be pretty darn good too. All right. I appreciate you guys listening to our Saturday special. We are going to end it. We will be back in a couple weeks. By the way, keep tuning in. And if you are a fan of any college team in the state of Virginia, I run a website, virginiasportsreport.com. Go there. We're doing articles frequently. We've got podcasts that have been coming up. We're shut down for the off season. We'll be back in the fall, but we do have articles still going up. And by the way, you can write your own article about your own team if you like. You can write it, submit it on there. I will read it. I'll publish it. There's no obligation after that. You can write one article, never write again if you want. You can write all the time if you want. I love content, so whatever you guys want to do is fine. VirginiaSportsReport.com. Read it. I'll edit it. I'll post it. We'll be good to go. Thank you guys for joining in. We'll see you again. This is the CJ Sweat Show.